Hello, good afternoon everyone. I'm Alonso Ricardo. And right now, let me continue the discussion about the second language acquisition, individual differences in second language learning. But right now, let us move on to its next category since we have done in our first category, which is the intelligence. Right now, we will discuss about the language aptitude. Before I go further in our discussion, let me introduce to you the contents of this lesson. First, we will define the language aptitude. Next is the measurements of language aptitude. Next is the factors of language aptitude that predict success in language learning. And lastly, the language aptitude's implications in teaching. So first is the definition of language aptitude. When we talk about aptitude, it is the potential of an individual to learn quickly, whereas language aptitude, according to John Carroll in 1991, who is the pioneer in this area, language aptitude means the ability to learn quickly the language. So I want you to take note that the higher the aptitude, the greater ease and speed a learner can learn. So it is true that we may be able to learn quickly, but there are people who can learn at a faster rate. So the concept of this language aptitude does not only limit to the idea of some people who learn foreign language while others are not, but I want to make it clear that this language aptitude explains about the people who can learn foreign language at a faster rate. Now, to know the ability of a learner to learn quickly, there are a lot of aptitude tests appeared, but two of these tests are widely used. So let's discuss about the measurements of language aptitude. We have the Modern Language Aptitude Test and the Prince-Lure Language Aptitude Battery. The Modern Language Aptitude Test. These are the tests on how individuals learn foreign language in a given amount of time and condition. It is used to determine which individual will profit most from language training. So in this Modern Language Aptitude Test, the scores are being tallied, but there are no points are being deducted, like for some erroneous answers, since the scores in this Modern Language Aptitude Test are interpreted differently from institution to institution. Yes, it is that the institution will set a cut-off scores to determine who are eligible for language training. So it is administered to college or university students. Next is for Prince-Lure Language Aptitude Battery. It was developed by Dr. Paul Prince-Lure, and this Prince-Lure Language Aptitude Battery is being given to 7th to 14th grade, meaning these are students who are in high school or senior high school. It is usually given before or at the time students begin the study of foreign language. Now, in doing this test, there are components that need to be considered. For the Modern Language Aptitude Test of Carroll, we have 4 components of language aptitude. So we have the phonetic coding ability, the grammatical sensitivity, the role learning ability, and the inductive learning ability. For phonetic coding ability, it is the ability to code sounds, meaning its concerns is the auditory processing input. Whereas grammatical sensitivity, it is the ability to recognize the function of a lexical element in a sentence. It means to say that it is the ability to recognize the function that words fulfill in a sentence. For role learning ability, it is the ability to learn and retain association between words in a new language and their meaning in English. And lastly, for inductive learning ability of Carroll's 4 components of language aptitude, It is the ability to infer rules governing the structure of a language, like making an extrapolation or to make a conclusion or concluding something. If Carol's in modern language acquisition test, we have aptitude test rather, we have 4 components of language aptitude. We here have 2 components of language aptitude. First is the verbal ability and the auditory ability. Verbal ability means the ability to handle the mechanics of learning a foreign language. Verbal. Next is auditory, means hear. Ability to hear, to recognize, and even to reproduce sounds in the foreign language. These 2 aptitude tests helps to test students to identify and memorize new sounds, to figure out grammatical rules, to remember new words. However, as the time goes by, these tests become irrelevant, according to some teachers and even researchers in the process of language acquisition. But some also said that these tests are predictive of success of a learner's second language learning. Now, we have here factors of language aptitude that predict success in language learning. There were 3 pioneers on these factors of language aptitude that predict success in language learning. We have Ellis in 2001 of his working memory, Westry in 1981 and his instructional program, and Neufeld in 1978 on his previous learning experiences. So let us discuss one by one the factors of language aptitude that predict success in language learning. So we have the working memory of Nick Ellis in 2001. He hypothesized that our working memory capacity is the most important variable in predicting success on language learning, which means that the active process of information contributes distinctively to the second language acquisition. Since every individual differs in the amount of information they may be able to process in their working memory. For Peter Skennan in 1989, he suggests that the learners does not need to be strong in all components of aptitude to be said as successful language learners. Why? Why do you think so that for Peter Skennan that learners does not need to be strong in all of the components of aptitude to be said as successful language learners? Since for Peter Skennan, learners varies in their way of learning or acquiring. For example, some may have a strong memories but only average abilities in language analysis. That's the point for Peter Skennan. Okay, next is for the instructional program of Westry in 1981. He said that learners' ability to learn language quickly may account for the success in different types of instructional programs. So, meaning, for Westry in 1981, the success of learning the language can be because of the instructional programs given. So, for instance, there is a satisfaction when students were matched with compatible teaching environment. Since if we are going to observe, we could really see that those students who feel that they were compatible to a particular teaching environment, they may be able to achieve the lesson. They may be able to learn quickly. So they may be able to learn the language quickly. That's for instructional program. Next is for the previous learning experiences of Neufeld in 1978. He said that our previous learning experiences gave us the way to have the ability to shine in second language. So for Neufeld, it is not about being dependent on what is equipped innately, but for our previous learning experiences. Now, before I'm going to end this discussion, I want you to remember about this language aptitude. Want to remember that language aptitude is not about the failure or the success of a learner in learning the language. Hence, when we talk about language aptitude, it is about to those learners who learn language more quickly than others. That's the point of the language aptitude. Now, what are the possible conclusions can be drawn to this language aptitude or language aptitude's implications in teaching? So in a classroom setting, we as future educators, we can do different things that can improve learners' ability. One of this is by helping them to identify their preferences in learning. Second, due to the advancement of the things around us, one of this is the technology. We can create a new teaching styles that would benefit for the students' new way of acquiring learning. And lastly, we educators must help to develop learners' autonomy. So here is my references along on this discussion. So that would be all, and thank you. Keep safe.